family constellations. So this is a term that was completely unfamiliar to me until about maybe a year ago. But now it seems to be cropping up everywhere. And so I figured I'd talk about it a little bit. Now, I have a friend, Alita. She is amazing. I will link her info with this video because she does family constellation work. And she was actually my first introduction into this whole thing. The idea that, I mean, not a new idea, right? That like family, spiritually, your family, your biological family, there's lots to be uncovered there, right? For spiritual advancement, they install the buttons, right? They don't press your buttons, they install them. I love that saying. And so I've seen a couple of other practitioners. Alita was the only one that I knew doing it. And I did have a session with her a while back, and it was, I can't even put it into words still. Months later, I've had people ask me about it, and I'm just like, it was just so incredibly touching and deep, and, the effects of it have rippled out for sure. I'm not familiar with anybody else who's doing it, although I am seeing these types of readings pop up. And I wanted to talk a little bit about family constellations from an astrological perspective because, and Alita and I have talked about this, someday when we have disposable time, right, we'll get together and try to figure out how to work this. But you can actually see a lot of the connections among family members through astrology. I tell people all the time, signs run in families. It's very common to see a family that has like a lot of Aquarians or whatever like that. But it actually goes even deeper than that. It's not just the signs that will run in families. It's actual specific degrees will run in families. But you have to know how to look for it, right? Obviously you have to have the birth information for, for the people involved, which is usually not that hard to get, right? If you're born here in this country, in a hospital, which I feel like is the experience for most people, that information is obtainable through your city hall or whatever. I get people coming from other countries where it can be a little bit more difficult for them to get their hands on that information, or they're relying more on like anecdotal stuff from within the family. But even without the birth time, you can still make quite a bit of headway with this. So I'm going to give a couple of examples of what I'm talking about from my own family experience, just so you understand. So it's a basic synastry reading, right? Synastry is the business of comparing two charts. And most often when I do a synastry reading, it's because some lovesick lady has contacted me and is like, I think I found my twin flame and I want you to look at our charts. No, I kid, kinda. But, a lot of the synastry readings I do are romantic in nature. But you can absolutely apply synastry to family, and that is exactly what a family constellation type reading would look like. And these are the types of things that would come back. So I'm going to use examples from within my own family system. So I'll start with my sister, and then I'll move on to an example for me. So my sister has been married twice. Her first husband was born on October 27th. Her second current husband was also born on October 27th. So, kind of a coincidence, right? If you believe in such things. Add to that my son, my oldest child, who is 16 years old, was born on October 26th, right? So it's a little bit harder to kind of chalk that up to coincidence, right? Why? Because, you can see like somebody getting married to two different times to guys that have the same birthday, but like I was not induced. I didn't choose the day October 26th. Like I just went into labor actually on the 25th and had him the following morning on the 26th. So we have 3 men in our families who have birthdays within 24 hours of each other. What is the significance of that astrologically? Well, between October 26th and October 27th every year, the sun is moving between 2 and 3 degrees of Scorpio. So my son, my oldest child, is a 2-degree Scorpio sun, and my brother-in-law's brothers-in-law are 3-degree Scorpio suns. Okay, all right. My mom, who is passed, was a Libra sun, Pisces moon, but for the longest time I had no idea what her rising was because she didn't have her birth time. And so one day, years ago, we were kind of just hanging around, didn't have anything to do. And I was like, hey, let's take a ride over to the town next door where she was born. And let's pull your birth certificate. Like, I'm dying. I'd love to know, like, I'd love to be able to get this information. And so she was game. So we went and we did it. I pulled her birth time, got her rising. And lo and behold, my mother is a 2-degree Scorpio rising. Not only is she a 2-degree Scorpio rising, but she has a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction right on her ascendant at 2 degrees of Scorpio. Like, it's like exact, okay? So obviously, I mean, the ascendant is significant for anybody, but having a double planetary conjunction on top of that ascendant is hugely significant. So it's very eye-opening to me, as far as my mother, my mother and her personality and all of her woes are concerned. It made perfect sense when I saw it, but clearly emphasized, right? So what does all this mean? Well, it means that, energetically, my sister married 2 men who have birthdays that are energetically connected to my mother's rising, and I gave birth allegedly randomly, during basically that same portal, right? So as the sun was moving through that energetic degree on 3 separate years, there was a significance in my life and in my sister's life that is energetically connected to my mother, right? Now, similar thing happens with my chart and my dad, right? So my moon is at 14 degrees of Cancer. I have 2 baby daddies, my ex-husband and my ex, who I was never married to, the father of my 2 youngest kids. They have, so my ex-husband's Venus is at 14 degrees of Cancer. So it's an exact conjunction between his Venus and my moon. My ex, the father of my 2 youngest kids, I don't even know what to call him, his Venus, I believe, is at 16 degrees of Cancer, maybe 15. So it's a little bit further away, but like damn close, right? Like close enough, good enough for government work, I always say, right? So that was an exact conjunction. So, again, coincidental, right? That I just so happened to meet and fall in love and procreate with 2 men whose Venus is exactly conjunct my moon. It does make sense astrologically that I would be attracted to men like that, right? That's a pretty solid connection energetically, especially for a love match. But why does this connect it to my dad? Well, as it turns out, my father had a 15-degree Cancer Venus. So, and my dad, growing up, my father raised my sister and I. He was a single dad. My mom was kind of nowhere to be found for a while. And, so my father pretty heavily imprinted on me as a child, which most fathers do, but I would say like kind of arguably more so than the average, because he was kind of, he was the parent that was in charge and around all the time. So, his Venus conjunct my moon obviously made an impact. And it made such an impact that I then went on to, again, marry and or procreate with 2 men who had the exact same Venus position. Now, this is not coincidental. I did not know let me think. I was not into astrology at all when my sister married her first husband, when my son was born, when she married her second husband, I think I already was. When I got married originally, right? So, I mean, my point being that, like, this is obviously not something that was planned. These are all things that I backed into by doing this, like, family constellation type work, right? So, not that you could really, that'd be kind of crazy to plan this type of stuff anyway. There are probably people that would do it, but I'm not one of them. So, it's very interesting stuff. And, without getting too personal, there's a lot of trauma attached to my childhood, right? My story from both my father and my mother. I'm very open about my struggles with alcoholism and addiction. Both of my parents struggled with addiction mainly. My father died of an overdose. My mother died of, I suspect, kidney failure from years and years and years of chronic abuse of her body through drugs and alcohol. So, you can imagine that being the baseline, my childhood was less than stellar. So, the fact that these connections are there, there's a lot of fodder there, right? There's a lot going on in those energetic connections that can help me to understand how my specific brand of trauma, I guess, if you will, right? Which is extremely helpful because it certainly has been my experience, and I've met and worked with a lot of people who kind of have the same thing where it's like, I want to do the work. I want to be better. I want to heal. But practically speaking, I have no fucking idea how to do it, right? Like, how do I, like, give me some concrete steps. And there's so few people out there, healing practitioners, who can do anything other than like, well, I'll send you Reiki, right? Or something like that. And it's like, I mean, great, thank you. I appreciate that. But like, I need some practical advice on how to start digging into this stuff. And you can't dig into it if you can't see it, right? So this is one of the ways that astrology is super helpful, because it can help you actually pinpoint like, oh, okay, right? Like, my dad, I had babies with people who, energetically reminded me of my dad. Like, and what the fuck does that say about me, right? My sister married my fucking mother twice, right? Like, not picking on you, Jizzles, but like, it's just, it is what it is, right? Energetically, it's there, and it's for us to kind of, reverse engineer or not, right? You're free to ignore that kind of stuff if you want, but, if you're looking for actual healing, this is where it's at, right? This is the type of stuff that can help you find it. So, all right, time for me to go get my daily matcha. Deuces all.